Hello and welcome to Godless Bitches 2.0, which is a show that aims to raise awareness of civil rights issues, progress, and setbacks from the past and present, as well as a discussion of what we hope will be realized in the future. This show, as well as a bunch of others, are produced by the Atheist Community of Austin, an educational nonprofit dedicated to the separation of government and religion and the promotion of positive atheism. In addition, the ACA promotes equal rights for all and humanist charitable giving, both financial and in action. I am your host, Clare Wuellner, and with me today is Phil Ferguson.
Hello, Claire. How are you?
I'm great, and you?
I'm fantastic.
Good.
Thank you.
It's so good to have you here. Phil is in town to do some other shows and some other stuff.
A couple shows, yeah.
Yeah, and they said, would you like for him to be on Godless Bitches? And I was like, yes, because we do civil rights. And when I think civil rights, I don't necessarily think Phil Ferguson. But, see, I know something about him that y'all might not know, and that is that he does have something to say about civil rights in a couple of different streams, and we'll get to those in just a minute. But first, let's find out a little bit about you. So Polaris Financial Planning, tell me about that business.
That's my business. I help people plan for retirement, get to retirement, figure out how to invest, how to make their money last, and do it as tax efficient and as cost efficient as possible. And I also have a podcast, The Phil Ferguson Show, where I talk a lot about those same issues and how does one invest. I guess I teach people how to money. And
right.
The first step, of course, is spend less than you make. Easy to say.
Very hard to do.
Harder to do. The next step is investing, and that's where I normally focus my energies at trying to maximize your return. And the third step, of course, is time. Investing takes time, and it breaks my heart when someone comes to me a few years from retirement and they said they're ready to start saving. It's going to be a real big problem for them. So
Yeah, it's going to take, but it can be done. It can be done.
Can be done.
You don't ever want to discourage somebody from starting because it can be done. You are kind of known as the go-to financial advisor in the secular community. Do you also market to non-secular folk?
I don't. I support conferences, promote shows like this, local events, national events. My show and listeners, we just raised $7,500 for American atheists to give travel grants to high school and college students to come to an atheist conference. So if you happen to be a student listening to the show, well, you probably just missed the cutoff because the convention is Easter. So maybe last minute there's still money left. But my plan was to have maybe 150, 200 extra students go to the American Atheist Conference because I'm not going to be here forever to fight the fight, and I want more people to help me, and I want a lot of young people to help me so that we can all collectively keep trying to make the world a better place going forward.
Paying it forward in
That's
a
right.
very literal sense. That's amazing. I'm so glad you're doing that.
Very kind.
And I've been a student and have benefited from those sorts of things, so
Yep.
they're very effective. Yeah, I was just about to ask about that. And that convention is April 19th through 21st in Cincinnati, Ohio. And the travel grant program is all your fault.
That's right.
So you have the Phil Ferguson Show, and you already told us a little bit, but how long have you been doing that, and what are some of the topics you've talked about?
Sure. The Phil Ferguson Show, I just did episode 300.
Holy cats.
So every once in a while I skip a week or two. So, I mean, that's 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. Really good time. Mostly it's limited to politics, religion, and money.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the 3 topics you should not discuss with your family on an often basis. But
Great.
I can do anything from, I had on a Pulitzer Prize nominee author. He wrote a book called God's Bankers. He spent 8 years researching the Vatican Bank.
Oh, gosh.
So we can go from an extreme like that to a person who wrote a book on how to invest in index funds, to someone who is an attorney for the Freedom from Religion Foundation. So it's anything about religion, politics, money. Also had on my show a gentleman, I think he spent 15, 20 years as the official historian for the United States House of Representatives.
Now
And
there's
so if you're interested in the history of politics, some people listen to that show and like have him on it every month. And I'm like, well, let's not get carried away. But he has been on about once a year. So try to change it up, different topics. And That was one of the reasons I went with the really lame name of The Phil Ferguson Show, because it's whatever Phil wants.
Right.
And I like a variety of topics, so
Right.
I try to change it up.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to look for that particular
There you
show.
go.
I haven't seen it.
Yep.
All righty. So, so if listeners have investment questions, can they contact you?
Yeah, if you have questions about anything we talk about today, or you just want a second opinion, like a serious medical issue, probably a good idea to get a second opinion. Your finances might dictate the last 10, 20, 30 or more years of your life and how you're going to live. If you want a second opinion, just mention that you heard me on or watched me on Godless Bitches, and it's absolutely free to you. You send me an email. Please do not send any really personal information. Do not send your social security number, your date of birth. Don't send your statement from Fidelity showing what you own and why. Contact me first. We'll talk. If you still want to send something for me to review, we can do that. But don't just blindly email stuff like that, please. Thank you.
Yes.
People do it.
Right. I have a financial advisor, and anything that I email to him goes through this highly secure den of whatever to make sure it's all safe. So, and that's the way it should be done. Okay, so you're on Godless Bitches, which is a show about civil rights, and like, what does financial planning have to do with civil rights? And here is the first vein that I thought we should go into, and that is folks who watch this show tend to be socially conscious folks. They want to do the right thing in any number of ways, and one of them might be investing with a socially conscious sort of, And when the ACA, a few years ago, was thinking about investing some of the money that they have, one of the people on the board said we need to try to invest socially in a socially conscious, responsible way. And we asked you about that, and your answer kind of surprised some of us. Not me, because my financial advisor had told me the same thing.
Oh, nice.
Yes, but why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so most of you, or many of you, may have heard of this, but just in case, I want to get everybody on the same page. A socially responsible mutual fund or a socially responsible index tries to invest in things or avoid investing in things that you, as the investor, might find favorable or unfavorable. As an example, they might not invest in tobacco companies. They might not invest in companies that make weapons. They might not invest in a company that hires children to do manual labor. One of the big problems with socially responsible mutual funds is that they all have a unique list of criteria for what they do and do not invest in. So if you are investing for that purpose, you may have to research dozens and dozens of funds to find the one that matches what your objectives are. You can find weird things like one mutual fund will not invest in Apple stock, Apple company, because they employ, eventually somewhere the companies employ children to do labor. Another fund might say, we are okay with Apple because they provide opportunity income for children of families who are poor and otherwise might not be able to eat. Well, maybe there's merit to both arguments, maybe there's not, but you need to know what's important to you. And once you've figured that out, you might find the fund that you like. The next thing that's a problem is almost every single socially responsible mutual fund will have a caveat in their 100-page prospectus that explains what they do and don't do. Something that says along the lines, we reserve the right to consider the pros and cons of each company, and we may invest in companies that don't actually meet our overall criteria. So how rigorously do they follow the rules that they laid out? We don't know. So that's the second problem. A third problem is you generally underperform what you could do if you invested in index funds. So you might make, on average, 1.6% less per year by investing in a socially responsible fund versus just a straight-up index fund. So you're making significantly less money year after year after year after year. And I've told people what you can do, invest in index funds and give 1% of your money away every year, you'd still be ahead. And people go, I don't want to give up 1% of my money per year.
Oh, well, then why?
And then I have to explain to them, you already are. You just didn't know it until I explained it to you. So you can make more money, give more money, and still be ahead. So that's nice. The part that really blows people's minds, and I have to walk through this very carefully, when you invest in a socially responsible mutual fund and they buy certain stocks, they might avoid some stocks, but they buy certain stocks, you aren't helping anyway. Socially responsible mutual funds are a marketing gimmick that cost you a lot of money. You don't do any benefit at all. So unless a company is going for their initial public offering, it's the first time they're issuing stock, or occasionally, rarely, they'll issue more stock later if the company needs a big surge of cash. When that mutual fund buys those stocks, they buy them from someone else that already owns those stocks. A different mutual fund or a different investor. So the money doesn't go to the company. The company already sold all the stocks. So you're not having a positive or a negative effect
on that company.
Or even on the stock value. Very clever listeners to my show will point out to me, and they're right, that if enough people, for example, didn't buy tobacco stock prices could go down because you've altered the supply and demand forces for the price of that stock. If enough people refuse to buy stock in a tobacco company, its price will go down. However, there will be somebody who doesn't give a shit about your personal agenda and will see that the price of the stock is below the intrinsic value of all the things that that company owns, and they will buy the stock, pushing the price back up. So you, by pushing your social agenda, lose money, and some of your money goes to the person that is in opposition to your political agenda. So you lose money, and people who disagree with you make money.
Off of your good deed.
That's right. So it's a fascinating thing. So you have to find the one that matches your goals. You have to see if they have the right and the ability to ignore your goals. You dramatically underperform what you can make in the indexes, and you don't actually help in any way whatsoever other than the comfort in your head that is illusionary that you're making a difference. So that's the heartbreaking news for socially responsible indexing.
Okay, so just to make it clear, 1.6%. That doesn't sound like much, maybe. Can you explain long-term what that means?
I wish I had done a calculation for my show. I actually did a calculation. That's a great question. Too good for me because I'm not ready for it. But over a long period of time, 10, 15, 20 years, depending on how much you invest, that could mean tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of lost growth in your investment. So it's a really big deal. If you make 10% a year, that means you're losing 16% of the growth every year, and it's just gone. So it racks up to a lot of money.
It does over time, and because these things don't grow in ways that the human mind that just does, rudimentary math understands. It's is it exponential?
Exponential, yes, perfect.
Thank
you. Just think of how many times a cashier can't do addition or subtraction when you buy something.
Oh, gosh.
Right? Most of us can't do exponential calculations in our head. A really easy way to generalize this is called the rule of 72. Are you familiar with that?
Nope.
So the rule of 72 says that if you, for example, make 10% per year, it'll take you 7.2 years for your portfolio to double. 7.2 times 10, 72. If you make about 7% a year, it'll take about 10 years for your money to double. If you make 1% a year, it'll take 72 years. It breaks down in the extremes because if you make 72% in 1 year, your portfolio did not double. It went up 72%. So in the extremes, it doesn't work. But around normal investment returns, it's a very quick and easy way to say, if I have an aggressive portfolio making 10, it might double every 7 years. If I have a conservative portfolio making 7, it might double every 10 years. And if you go really safe and make 4, it's going to take much longer to double.
Yeah. But I don't know if we want to get into, well, so I do a little bit. Investing socially, another thing that I would, in a socially responsible way, I imagine another thing it would affect would be your ability to diversify. Is that?
Yeah, diversification is a very important thing, but some financial advisors will have you diversify beyond the point of it providing value to your portfolio. So, for example, this is something I often get a lot of heat for, so maybe we'll get emails about this. I don't invest in gold. I don't recommend anyone invest in gold because gold in the long run matches about inflation, or about 3%. If I want to make a 3% return, I can buy very safe, very boring, very conservative U.S. government bonds and make 3%. The bad part about gold is it has volatility like the stock market. So if I'm willing to accept that kind of volatility, I can invest in the stock market. So gold in the long run doesn't increase your performance, nor does it stabilize your portfolio. It adds volatility with no benefit. So
Bonds, however, are very stable, but boring.
Well, not always, and that's
compared to gold.
Bonds are more complicated than stocks. So you can buy U.S. government short-term bonds. Matter of fact, if you've ever had a money market account, that actually owns bonds. But with an average maturity of 90 days or less, so very, very short-term bonds, they're going to pay what you expect them to pay. If, however, you buy a very high-quality United States government bond with a 20-year it's going to pay you for 20 years. You could lose 20 or 30% if interest rates go up. So it can actually be more volatile than the stock market, depending on the type of bonds that you buy. Okay. So it gets complicated.
All right. I don't want to lose people.
Yeah.
But one thing that might help people understand exponential growth a little better, I used to teach biology in graduate school, and we talk about exponential growth because human population growth and Darwin's theory of evolution requires that you have more things reproducing than survive and so forth. And so I would tell my students, I need some kids, I need some of y'all to come to my house and do some yard work. I have also a shed that needs to be built and a bunch of other stuff. And I need like 8 hours work a day. And the first day I'm going to pay you a penny. And then the second day I'll double that. And then the third day I'll double that. Do I have any takers?
And they all say no.
Of course they say no. But if you do the math, at the end of the whole thing, on day 31, it's millions of dollars for one day's work because exponential growth works that way. It's not intuitive. You think 1 penny, 2 penny, 4 penny, it'll take forever for me to earn anything an hour. No. 30 days and you're set for life. So fortunately, no one takes me up on it.
When is this yard work needed?
I'll
be right over.
Yes, it was all a scam. All right, especially on a graduate student's salary. I was not going to be able to pay anybody that sort of money. Okay, so let's see what else. I need my glasses because I have to read what's going on here. Yeah, so that brings me to another thing that I wanted to ask you about. Oh, here it is. We've done shows on the wage gap, and that's the gap in how much women are paid versus men. And anybody who doesn't believe it exists, the show that we talked about this was Godless Bitches 04.07. And the wage gap is real. If you say that women, their jobs just tend to pay less, the things that they choose to go into pay less, well, I have to ask, why is that? Why is teaching less important than, say, being a physician? Or why is art any less important than being a lawyer? If you don't think art is important, imagine the world without it. It's what gives us, what did Winston Churchill say? Something like the whole reason we do everything is so that arts can be maintained. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, sorry, I can't help
you. It was
you.
something like that. Arts are what make the world go around. Anywho, so women do get paid less in that way. And also, if you just look across the board at jobs where both men and women aren't it, women get paid less for doing the same job. That means that when it comes to investing, it's super important for women to make good choices.
It's kind of a triple threat for women.
Yep.
Or a triple threat against women, I guess, because you do make less ongoing year after year. And in the United States, the Social Security system is based on the income that you made while working.
Yep.
So if you make less while you're working, you get less in retirement. And the other thing, which often should be seen as a benefit, women tend to live longer, pardon me, but if your portfolio is not big enough, you go broke. So it is very, very important until we get these other problems fixed, that if you have these strikes against you and your success against you, you need to understand investing much more. You need to understand it better. And I do have couples where the husband will talk to me and hire me, and the wife doesn't care about money. I also have the case where the wife talks to me and the husband, and I have gay couples where they do the same thing. One person is interested, one person is not. One of the things that I really try to do is make sure that both of them are involved, because I don't want them to argue about what I'm doing. If they don't both agree with what I'm doing, they should fire me collectively, or they should hire me collectively. It's very important. So if you're in a situation, straight, gay, male, female, I don't care, you need to be involved. You need to understand what's going on, how it works, why your investments are doing what they're doing, because you may find yourself suddenly at some point in the future where now you're in charge of all of it. And you can still learn then, but it can be a bit of a learning curve. So take your time, learn the stuff, and if you want, I have a 4-book list recommendation for everybody.
Ooh, do you know the names off the top of your head?
I do.
All right. We will also have them in the show notes. Okay, Mark?
Show notes.
Yeah. All right.
So these 4 books are meant to be read in order.
Okay.
And they go from almost painfully simple to painfully complicated.
Okay.
So the first book is, and I want everyone to read this, even if you think you're advanced, because it helps you understand the mindset of where I'm coming from and how I direct things. The first one is The Richest Man in Babylon. If you're a quick reader, it's 2 hours. If you're not quick, it's 3, maybe 4 hours. It's even on YouTube for free. Someone read the entire book on YouTube.
Okay.
The Richest Man in Babylon. That teaches you basic ideas of why you need to save money and how money grows in a very friendly, story-based environment. I'll give a special extra warning for the listeners or the viewers of this show. It's not always the best with gender issues.
Okay.
So be advised that the book was written about 100 years ago. Okay. So it was written with the modern morality of 100 years ago. So keep that in mind.
So cut them a little huss and try to listen to the meta message.
Work through that. There is a part in the middle where it seems painfully redundant, and it is. But continue on. There's some more stories in it. Again, quick and easy read.
Cool.
The second book in the sequence is A Random Walk Down Wall Street. And this will teach you a basic vocabulary and how things work, like this is a stock, this is a bond, this is a mutual fund, this is how trading works. So you have that foundation to understand the more complex issues. And I mean this in the nicest way possible. If you've never thought about or studied how investing works, if you start learning up here, it won't make sense because you don't have the foundation. The next book is Winning the Loser's Game. And Winning the Loser's Game gives you information about why you should use index funds. And it's something I talk about all the time. If you learn nothing else from me today, remember the word, or the 2 words, index funds. That book goes over why that works and why that will continue to work. The 4th book is called Common Sense on Mutual Funds. And that one is written by John C. Bogle. And he is the founder, who unfortunately passed away about 6 months ago. He's the founder of the Vanguard Mutual Fund Company.
Oh, right.
And that book is very technical. That has a lot of statistics, graphs, charts, tables, standard deviation calculations. It is an amazing book. But if you start with that, you don't even understand the underlying vocabulary, let alone the math. So read them in that sequence. If you can learn about 2/3 of everything that's in all of these books, I predict that you'll beat 95% of all other investors, because you are going to know what to do and you're going to know what not to do. And that's a lot of the stuff they also cover in my show.
And when I was young, I taught high school for a little bit, and I stupidly did not start saving at that point, right? And one thing after another, I really didn't start saving until I was in my 30s or 40s. So don't be like me. If you are a woman or a minority, and those are the two groups that tend to have the problems with the wage gap and just disadvantages of various sorts, that means that you're going to end up where you're not going to be able to make as much money. It's super important that you start educating yourself about money. Yes, it's math and all that. Do it anyway, and start saving, even if it's just a little bit. And get a good financial advisor. There are financial advisors of two stripe. And do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'd be happy to.
Fee-based versus,
Yeah, and before I jump into that, I want to go back to your point, which I love. You got to save early and save a lot. A lot of people think that saving 10% is sufficient. You're wrong. It's not going to be enough. If you start when you're 23 and you want to retire in your 60s, 10% might work. Most people don't start saving 10% in their 20s or when they're 23. So for most people, the recommendation is 20%. So if you make $100,000, if you're fortunate enough to have a nice high-paying job, you better be saving $20,000 a year, or you're going to have a huge pay cut when you get to retirement. What was your question? I'm so sorry.
I'll go back to that in a minute, but I do want to also say, just because you haven't started now, and just because you're only doing 10% or 5% or no percent, still do it. Don't even if you're 60 years old, talk to a financial advisor.
Yes,
so the types of financial
the financial advisor. The first question you want to ask your financial advisor or your prospective financial advisor: are you a fiduciary? And a fiduciary has a very specific legal meaning that puts that advisor in a position where they are responsible for taking care of you. They're responsible for putting your interest first. 90+% of advisors are not fiduciary. So you ask this simple question: are you a fiduciary? If they say anything other than yes,
goodbye.
Assume no.
Yeah.
The next thing is you want a fee only. You don't want a fee-based advisor, because that means they charge a fee and other things.
No.
You want fee only. And they should be able to put both of these things in writing. If they can't do that, there's other people out there. It can be very hard to find someone who's fiduciary or fee only in the big broker-dealer firms. I generally don't mention their names, but they might start with a Morgan or an Edwards or something like that. But those people work for a big company. Their goal is to sell you things. And Elizabeth Warren did a nice survey using her office as a senator, where they sent out surveys to companies to find out what some of the rewards are paid to these people. They get vacations, they get jewelry, they get houses for selling things to you. And all of those bonuses, all of those perks have to come out of your money. You can go to any big city around the country and see giant buildings with investment company names on the top. It's just like casinos. Casinos aren't built on the backs of winners. They take your money, and things like annuities, I rant on those, and annuities, the insurance company often makes more money with your money than you do, which is a magical thing.
Get me started.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that a couple of years ago, I took one annuity and I broke down all the mathematics, and I went through it step by step for 25 minutes, and I was terrified that I was going to lose the audience, because most financial advisors, all the famous ones, most of them will say, don't buy an annuity, but then they stop. And you wonder, why don't they tell me why not to buy an annuity? Because it's complicated. It's a brilliant mathematical trick, and you have to understand all the steps involved. And it takes some explaining. So I did one of these, and it took 25 minutes, and it was the most positive emails I ever got, because people were like, I've always wondered, why don't you buy annuities?
Right.
And now someone explained it. That was me. So again, kind of stuff that might be on my podcast.
Right. Okay, so I've got a story about that that's going to just make you want to curl up. My father was loved me and was all that sort of good stuff, but he was horrible with money. My grandfather, when I was born, gave me a $1,000 U.S. saving bond when I was in 1965. Yes, I'm 50, almost 4. So had my father left it there, I don't know how much, tens of thousands of dollars probably by this point, right? But my father, who had such a person who was not a fiduciary and who was fee-based, talked him into buying me life insurance. Yeah. Life insurance. Babies don't need life insurance. They don't. The only people who need life insurance are people with children. So maybe you disagree with that, but that's...
Well, generally, I would say children or someone else that depends on them,
yes, a
even
dependent.
if they're an adult.
That's the thing. For me, it was children, but for other folks, it might be an adult who needs your financial assistance. So, so that means not only is the money I'm never going to see that money. My children might, if I die. But at the end of it, if I wanted to cash that out and try to get some of it out, it's worth about $3,000 right now.
Huh, that's not a lot.
No, it's horrible because the way it's maintained is the profit that is made on it goes into paying all the fees.
Yeah. It's very common. I will have people, and from time to time, someone will say, hey, Phil, I bought this annuity 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they'll give me the contract that they saved. They'll give me the documentation. They'll show me how much money they put in. We can see what it's worth today, and I can do all the mathematical calculations. A lot of insurance companies lead you to believe you're going to make something close to 8 or 9 or 10%. Most annuities that I've reviewed, and there's always the room that I haven't seen a good one yet. Maybe they exist. Most annuities end up making 2 to 3% per year. I had someone send me one, and they said, Phil, this annuity, and they had $300,000 in this annuity. He said, last year I made zero. And this wasn't at the end of 2018. This was at the end of 2017, where the market went up about 14%.
Good grief.
They made zero. And I said, no, that you must be looking at something wrong. Send me the documents. And we go over all of it, and we found out they had an upper limit. The most they could make in a year is 12%. The least they could make is zero. So those are your caps. But there's a factor that's calculated every month. So if the stock market goes up, you're capped to 1% per month, right? So if the market goes up 4% in a month, you make 1. Okay, you could still make 12 if it goes up every month. But then you have a month where it goes down 10. Guess what the monthly cap for minimum is?
No,
there is none. Right.
Yeah.
So you can make 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%, lose 10.
And then you're
make
0.
1%, lose 3. And they take all those monthly totals of the positive 1 as a cap monthly.
And a minus.
And all the unlimited minuses per month. They put it together, and it comes up with -8. But then they say, we promised you wouldn't lose money, so you get 0 for the year.
How very large of them.
So that was a case where the market went up 14%, but the investor made literally 0. And part of me is impressed because it's a brilliant mathematical game that they're playing, and the average person won't understand it even if they read the entire document.
Sure.
But who reads that? That's like installing
Nobody
Windows.
reads the chicken feed, no.
Yeah, you don't read it.
Right. So I would, after my father died, the person who was taking care of that a life insurance policy for me, he called me up and said that if there's anything he could do for me, he'd be happy to help me with investments and so forth. And he said that because I did this for your father years ago, and look at how much that thing is worth, and if it's because if I die, the payout's like $1 million something, whatever. And it's such a good investment. It was such a good investment. And I finally said, you need to stop saying this was a good investment. My grandfather gave me $1,000 in 1965, and if I had that, 1965, $1,000 was a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
If I'd had that and been able to invest it myself, it could be tens of thousands of dollars over the course of 50 years or whatever, or just left it in the bond that it was. And this is worth a lot of money, not to me.
Yeah.
That was my money, and I'm never going to see it. Stop telling me this was a great investment. You took advantage of my father.
So many thoughts pop in there. I'm trying to filter. One of them is that with savings bonds, that you go to your bank and you buy a savings bond, a lot of them pay very low rates, and after a period of time, they stop. They pay 0 after that. So it might have been that it would grow for a while and then you'd make nothing. I don't know what type of bond you had. So it gets complicated. Right. And with investing, if you are investing in the long run, the stock market's the only way to go. U.S. and international. In a short run, terrible, terrible things can happen.
Right. Yeah. I know.
So what I do is kind of a two-tier system when I call the safe part the cushion. And so I don't generally tell people how much to put in the cushion as a percentage of their portfolio. For my clients, we'll work out precisely how much it needs to be in there based on their cash flow needs.
Their needs, it's got to be personalized. It can't be.
And that's one of the things that is a limitation with my podcast. I never, ever give personalized financial advice to the listeners because I can't. There's thousands upon thousands of people listening, so I can't. But I can give you resources like the book list, give you ideas, help you understand how things work, and then you can do it on your own. It's not that hard to do, or you can hire a fiduciary advisor.
And footnote, this is why Susie Orman drives me crazy. One size fits all. You shouldn't have a house payment. Just get rid of your house payment.
Yeah.
Wait, no. Everybody's different. So back on the life insurance thing, what was I going to say to finish that out? Don't remember now. That's my brain giving out.
If you think of it, we'll come back to it.
Right. Dang. So, yeah, and if you're doing life insurance, we need to say this, it should be term.
Absolutely. You buy term and invest. Yeah, and like everything, it gets complicated. So term is like your car insurance.
Yeah.
You pay for a year. If something terrible happens to you, there's a payout. If you survive the year, you get nothing. Poof, the money you paid is gone, just like your car insurance. You pay your life insurance for a term, 1 year term, and you don't use it, it's gone. You can pay every year, and it adjusts every year as you get older. It gets more expensive. And when you get past 50 and 60, it gets dramatically more expensive. Or you can buy the next simple thing is whole life insurance, where you might pay $100,000 up front, and you're guaranteed life insurance for forever. Not necessarily bad, but it tends to get complicated when they go to whole or universal life or variable universal life, indexed annuity variable universal life. And one of my guidelines is the longer the name, the shittier the product. Because they're creating opportunities to hide things.
Yes,
term, 4 letters.
Yeah.
Can I swear in this show?
Oh, hell yeah.
Like, fuck, you know exactly what it means. Term, you know what exactly, it's 4 letters. It's easy.
Yeah.
Whole, a little longer, a little less optimal. But when they get variable universal indexed life annuity, what the fuck does that even mean? And I have had people send me contracts, and I'll start reading them around page 30 or 40. I can't continue because
that's ridiculous.
It's amazing, and it's always a game. And one of the problems I have with talking about annuities in a general sense, there is no such thing as a general annuity. Each one is a unique financial contract that you have signed with a financial institution. And one of the really important things to understand, the person that sells you an annuity does not need to know how it works. They get paid to sell. They don't get paid to understand.
Right.
Commissions on an annuity might be 10 or even 15%. So if you show up with $100,000, they have a motivation to make $10,000 by convincing you to buy this. To be clear, I get paid for what I do. That's 1% or lower, depending on the size of the portfolio. And a person could point out that if they get 10% one time, if a client stays with me over 15 years, I might make more than that salesperson. And they're right. I will make more. But all of my clients can leave at any time.
There's no conflict of
interest. I have
interest.
to keep them happier. Right. So what I tell people is you get to put my greed to work for you.
Right.
Because the bigger your portfolio gets, the bigger my fee gets. If your objective is to not have a bigger portfolio, you would have to have problems hiring me. You should have problems hiring me because what's the point? So mostly I work with people that want to have more money in the future.
Right. Yeah. So that's the proper sort of motivation you want. That somebody's on your side, not somebody who's just making money for themselves. Because I'm pretty sure that over the years, the guy who sold that life insurance policy to my father made lots and lots and lots of money. So, especially since he didn't have to do anything. And I didn't die.
Another thing, if you have something else you want to jump in, just let me know. But debt. People get really freaked out about debt.
Okay.
Debt is a tool and you can use it wisely, or it can take you down. So with a credit card, if your interest rate on that credit card is 24.6%, pay that off, get a second job, get a third job, don't eat out, don't buy Starbucks, don't do anything until you get that 24% card paid off.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
The contract will say interest rate 1.6% on that 24.
Per month?
Yeah, because it's per month. So multiply that times 12, and then you're maybe talking about the number.
But as a recent example I did on my show, I just bought a Chevy Bolt with a B for boy EV car. It's an electric car that you plug in.
Cool.
And let's just say it was around $40,000. I could pay for the car, but instead I got a loan for the car.
Yep, because?
Because I can invest that $40,000 for the next 7-10 years and have it grow and compound and double. My penalty for that loan is $9,000. So I'm out $9,000, but I expect to make $40,000. It might not work out, but if you do these kind of things over your entire lifetime, you could end up getting a situation where the last 10 years, for example, that $40,000 could have turned into $160,000. The market in the last 10 years has made a staggering amount of money. If you get a situation like 2000 or 2008, after 7 or 8 years, you could be about even. So you may not make a whole lot of money in that case, but it's a life philosophy. I like to quote a famous poet, when it comes to the stock market, there is no try, there is only do or not do. So.
I love it. That's good. Oh my gosh. Okay, so those were all of my questions. And please keep in mind, all of this was, my motivation here was to help folks who are disadvantaged in some way or another, either by gender or skin color or whatever else that means that you're in a financially more precarious place, to do the best you can with what you have. So if you didn't understand anything we were talking about, please read up until you do, because this is your life, your ability to retire, your ability to stay healthy and get the health care that you might need. And I also realize that we're talking about buying cars and other things that, like, damn, I don't have 2 pennies to rub together. I can't even think about that. We get it. Start wherever you are and take the best financial care you can of yourself, and get advice when you can.
But it's an interesting point, and a very good point that you just not everybody can afford a car at all.
Right.
I will also do segments for people that have very little money. For example, I did a half-hour segment on an app that you can put on your phone called Acorns, where when you buy something, it rounds up to the next dollar and invests a fraction of a dollar for you. The short answer for that is don't use Acorns. So again, I did a whole show on that. If that's freaking you out or you're using Acorns and you want to know why, you can email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. The big problem with Acorns, for one, the money in the investments are not held in your name. They're held in their name.
Oh, that's really rotten.
So if the company called Acorns goes broke, your money could disappear.
Oh, that's just evil.
They tell you that you can transfer all of it out with no fee, and that's true. However, if you own a fractional share of an ETF through Acorns, which you will because that's one of the tricks that they do, to liquidate those fractional shares is $25 per position. So if you have 6 ETFs, it'll cost you $150 to get out $200 of money. So the biggest problem with Acorns, Betterment, and a lot of these different apps is that they're marketing. You can go to Vanguard, you can go to Schwab, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, almost any of the big names you see on TV. You can open up an account for free. You can link it to your bank, and you can send $5 a month by yourself. It won't have a really cool and sexy interface on your phone.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to be missing.
Yeah,
but
right.
It works. It's a system, and if something happens to Fidelity, your money has guarantees, levels of guarantees, even backed by the government through mutual fund guarantee insurance. There's all kinds of protections. But quite honestly, the problem with all of those strategies, with saving $5 a month, you will never, ever, ever retire saving $5 a month. Your problem is not finding the best solution of how to invest. The problem you have is lack of money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That's the first step in how to money. You have to have money first. And it's not always easy. I had listeners to my show call me up and they said, Phil, can you help us figure out how to pay our bills? Husband and wife team, both making over $100,000 a year. They couldn't pay off their credit cards.
Eeks.
And so one of the questions I asked them, I said, how often do you eat out a day? And they said 4.
Wow.
Every single meal, every time. They don't have food in our house. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm going to make you $20,000 with this magic word, grocery store. Then the next thing I talk about is their cars. They lease their cars. They're driving like a Yukon and an Escalade that they lease. Mm-hmm. And every 2 years, they turn in that $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 car and they start another lease. Mm-hmm. The money just disappears. You have to save money first before anything else matters. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's not always easy, but it's important.
Sometimes that $5 a month can just create a cushion for you for emergencies.
That's right.
Or just an emergency fund. So starting there is a fine thing. Don't knock it. Any money that you can put aside so that you can have that cushion is a good thing. Thank you so much, Phil.
My pleasure, my honor. Of course, listeners, mention that you saw me, heard me on Godless Bitches. Send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com, and we'll talk about your situation and see if I can help you. No cost, no hidden agendas. It's what I do for this community. I served on the Secular Student Alliance Board. I was the treasurer for the Reason Rally in 2016. I was on the Atheist Alliance International Board. And my company, by the way, I tithe. I don't know if you knew that.
No, that's interesting.
About 10% of my company's gross, not net, gross revenue goes to supporting the secular movement. So we talked about the fundraiser for American Atheists and Students. Mm-hmm. Last year through the podcast, we raised $42,000 for the Secular Student Alliance. So if you're kind of wondering, how does a financial guy get on here to be kind of a shameless shill for the business? It's because of the things I do for the community and the environment. And for free, for any of you who are watching or listening, just contact me. And there's no tricks, no hooks.
Social action. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks to the folks on the other side of the wall over there. Mark and Vern, I believe. And I think Ben is over there too. And I'm Clare Wuellner, your host. I want to leave you with one final thought. We don't need a savior. We have each other. It's all we've ever had and all we'll ever need. Bye.